record this webinar, and by participating you consent. But now let's get started with the topic. Why do we organize this webinar series, PROs around the world, around the globe, actually to bring together different PROs, to exchange experience and to learn from each other. And I'm very happy that today we are traveling to Kenya and we will hear about PAKPRO's path to inspire shift in consumer and industry behavior, a mission to promote sustainable packaging practices. So I'm very delighted to welcome our speaker, Mrs. Joyce Gachugi-Waweru. I hope I pronounce your name right. She has 18 years of leadership experience in shared value and corporate sustainability and serves today as CEO of PAKPRO. So very warm welcome to you, Joyce. And yeah, handing over to you. We already tested that you are able to share the slides.
My background is actually in environmental science. I am a student of Kenyatta University, which is a local public university here in Kenya. I dare say one of the best in terms of environmental studies. But I have also undertaken additional training in public policy at the master's level. Of course, some training in circular economy. And through our partner, Danida, the Danish government, as I have also been able to undertake some training in extended producer responsibility. So today I'm honored to be here, of course, with you, esteemed colleagues and other practitioners in the space. I think for all of us here, we agree that extended producer responsibility is an evolving space. There might be forerunners who started early, but I think dimensions continue to emerge that continue to thrust discourse around trying to build knowledge around the area. I would like to showcase a little bit about what we are doing in Kenya. We are not fully mandatory, and I'll explain why as we are moving. By mandatory, I mean mandatory extended producer responsibility. I'll run you through who we are, the value chain in terms of the space we are operating in, how our government has segmented EPR in terms of implementation, some of the programs that we are implementing in terms of engaging with the value chain. Of course, because we're in Kenya, the reality of having an informal sector is at play. And so there are critical cog in terms of being able to implement waste management. And so, of course, even with EPR, we must factor them in and try and have inclusivity of how we engage with that particular sector of the value chain. And then, of course, around governance and EPR fees. And I will be happy to take any questions or any input that you might have that we feel that could help us in our market. So PAKPRO is the Packaging Producer Responsibility Organization. We were formerly actually known as PETCO, similar to what you have in South Africa. We were the Kenya PET Recycling Company Limited, and we were incorporated in the year 2018. So from the year 2018, we have been undertaking voluntary extended producer responsibility. And the idea is that we are seeking to regulate post-consumer packaging for our membership. At the time of inception, we only had 7 companies, and I'll give you a story about why we started. But we are still limited by guarantee, which means no one entity, none of our members own us. All liability is borne by ourselves as PAKPRO. We are a not-for-profit organization. We are currently operating in a quasi-mandatory EPR environment. Why do I say quasi? We have a Sustainable Waste Management Act in Kenya, which, while revolutionary in and of itself, we do not have a regulation around extended producer responsibility, which means we only have one section, actually Section 13 of the Sustainable Waste Management Act of 2022, and I would be happy to share that actually states that producers, all producers introducing products or packaging material into the country shall bear extended producer responsibility for the life cycle of their products and their packaging while in the country. Because of that, our authority, our regulator, the National Environmental Management Authority, which is NEMA, is the one that has been charged with implementing EPR in our country. However, because we do not have the regulations in place, industry is not able to effectively implement EPR, and our regulator is not able to also enforce EPR properly. As such, we are in a quasi-mandatory EPR environment because our regulator, the authority, still expects companies to demonstrate some sort of compliance, which means they need to become a member of a PRO, and they need to demonstrate that their packaging material or their products are being managed accordingly. Now, we have a competitive producer responsibility environment, and I should actually state that we do have a draft EPR regulation that has already been prepared, but it has not actually been gazetted. And so it's not yet law here in Kenya. But in that law and at play right now, we have a competitive producer responsibility environment, which means we have more than one PRO. As an organization, we do have a competitor that is also offering EPR services or EPR for packaging, post-consumer packaging material. NEMA, being our regulator and the authority, is supposed to be the one to issue us with a license. Right now, we are registered as a business and not for profit. And that is how we are able to have a legal contract and some sort of legal responsibility with the members that we represent. Now, as I said, our story started in 2018. And in 2018, for most of you who have been in Kenya, if you have been to Kenya, you will realize that when you're coming to disembark from the aircraft, there's always an announcement that states in Kenya, plastic bags are not allowed. And as such, you're required to actually dispose of that plastic bag before you disembark from the aircraft. That happened in 2017 when our government, the Ministry of Environment, it banned plastic flat bags in Kenya. What happened next is that they wanted to ban the plastic PET bottles. And at the time, we had so many brands, of course, some of our members like Coca-Cola and other big brands like Unilever and others, our local super brands as well, they had just put in investment in terms of expanding their production lines for PET. As such, they felt that it would have been perilous to their businesses to be able to, if this ban was to be implemented. Also, there had not been any PET ban anywhere in the globe that was successful. At the time, some of our members, Coca-Cola specifically, was already a member of PETCO in South Africa, which is a PRO that was at the time dealing with PET plastic bottles. And so they were able to have a conversation with our government and engagement with different industry players and demonstrate that actually EPR can work if implemented properly. And so our government at the time agreed to have a 3-year working framework on condition that we would create an organization, and that is where PETCO was birthed here in Kenya, to actually be able to undertake EPR and to be able to engage with industry players so that they can then begin to join this organization to be able to recover PET bottles. As of 2021, we had already recovered 25,000 metric tons of PET bottles. But beyond that is that we had actually been able to engage with the waste collection value chain. Specifically, as I had stated earlier, are the informal sector players. So we have over 2,000 plus. We call them waste entrepreneurs here because we feel the term pickers is derogatory or scavengers. And so we have been working with this group and continue to grow it as we move along. I believe by the end of this year, we should be getting to about 4,000 waste entrepreneurs in the system. We provide training to them. We provide support either by providing personal protective equipment, because we know most of these people are working in dump sites, either legal or illegal, but they are areas that are unsanitary for them. Beyond that, of course, we have been able to deploy waste collection infrastructure by way of bins in different areas. In Kenya today, you are not allowed to have any single-use plastic in any protected area. A protected area is a forest, a beach, or any riparian ecosystem. However, because of leakage that we know happens because of human beings and law enforcement, we realize that the need for having bins is required so that whatever leakage is recovered, it's able to be put in the bin, and we are able to service those bins and take that material for recycling. Beyond that, of course, is we have developed partnerships and built partnerships, because when we started EPR in Kenya, nobody was familiar with EPR. Actually, we relied heavily on the our South African counterparts, PETCO in South Africa, to be able to actually support us, to be able to develop EPR here in Kenya. And so today you find a lot of the things that we are doing in Kenya, especially for ourselves as PAKPRO, are actually very similar to what PETCO in South Africa is doing. So in terms of partnerships, of course, we have many partners, and I'll show you as we move along in this presentation, but marine plastic pollution is at the core of what we seek to do. And for that, we have partnered with WWF. And ideally, we are working in all our coastal ecosystems to try ensure that we are providing collection services, training to the ecosystem, but to be able to provide linkages to recyclers so that when they collect these materials, they can be able to be paid for them because of the value that is created and demanded. Beyond that, of course, is the legislative process. And as an organization, we have been part and parcel of the committees and the technical teams and task forces that have actually developed the legislation and policies that are being used today around EPR and waste management in the country. So the Sustainable Waste Management Act that I had mentioned earlier, and the draft EPR regulations. Our mission is really to inspire, value, and regulate. Of course, of importance to our members is to ensure that we provide a platform for them to comply with government regulation. We are very keen to ensure that we begin to see a shift in consumer and industry behavior toward the recycling of packaging material. And of course, this means trying to create value for the post-consumer packaging material, but also try to create shared value, which means the price of these products the packaging material has to be attractive, but also to be able to provide feedstock for our recycling facilities, to be able to scale their operations and to be able to begin to see a transition into higher value recycling. Our values, of course, are around people, purpose, and planet. People, very critical to us because, as I said, the waste value chain is the heart of what we do, and our members as well. So in an effort to be able to deliver impact for both our members and the value chain, we have sought to be able to create entrepreneurship opportunities so that we are able to create a demand and create value for the products that are generated. This is the post-consumer packaging, but also to be able to demonstrate to our brand owners that they too can be able to offtake whatever is recycled. Okay. And so by our strategic objectives are that by 2025, as I mentioned, we are going to shift consumer and industry awareness. So design for recycling is a very big cog for us. I'm happy to say that here in Kenya today, as of March this year, 2024, we have a standard now in place for recycled PET for food grade application. Beyond that, the first food grade rPET line is actually going to be running in December of this year. So we are very excited about that because it shows the strides that have been made in terms of being able to move from the basic form of recycling, which is basically collection and crushing or shredding to make flakes, and in a higher level than pellets, but it was purely for export. What this rPET is going to do for us is that we are able to now recycle these bottles and use the materials locally. I'm happy to say that, of course, within our membership, there are already offtake arrangements and agreements with these recyclers so that they are able to take up the rPET that will be produced. Remember, we are still in a highly evolving space, which means we don't actually have any real policy at play that requires the use of recycled content or whatever percentage in any of the new packaging products that are put into the market, which means these companies and brand owners that I'm talking about are actually doing it from a voluntary perspective in our country. In other markets in EU and elsewhere, we appreciate that the laws are there and the regulations are there, but in our market, it's purely voluntary. And so for us, it's a very positive step in trying to be able to see that shift. And then, of course, green collection and recycling. This is integral to what we do, developing strategic partnerships. And then, of course, advocacy and knowledge management. One of the things, and you will hear this, of course, a lot of emerging markets, is the lack of data, either in terms of collection and recycling, but also in terms of what they're putting into the market. And for EPR, you'll appreciate that you need to know what is being placed in the market. Even when it comes to target setting, you need to have a baseline. How much volume is being put into the market to be able to know where you're moving to and whether the targets you're actually setting are actually yielding any traction or not. So in terms of the value chain, our government set out a very ambitious EPR requirement. And so you will find, for any of you who have had the opportunity to go through any draft regulation that we have in the country around EPR, that in Kenya, these are the materials that are subjected to EPR. All of these materials. It's wild. I know we've had a lot of comments where they say, how are you able to do EPR for all of these things? It is not easy. And I put it to you that it's not being done 100%. However, from where our government was sitting, there was no rationale for one over the other. Okay. And so they decided to do it this way so that then we can grow responsibility across streams over the period of time as we move along. So they are going to do it, of course, in a staggered manner. And of course, plastic packaging and any packaging material, we are the ones, of course, who eat the short end of the stick, which means that regulation for packaging materials started before for other materials. And so today we do have 2 PROs that are handling packaging materials. We also have a PRO that is handling electrical and electronic equipment. And we also have another one that is handling hazardous packaging, which really focuses on the agrochemicals, the veterinary products, but also the oils and lubricants, the batteries, and any pharmaceutical products, their packaging materials, paints, etc. In terms of ourselves as a business, our categories are really, as I said, around packaging, and specifically you'll find it's really more food, beverage, and consumer goods. And so when we broke down who are the people we represent, these are really brand owners, fillers, packers, repackers, importers of finished goods and distributors, retailers, food and beverage outlets, converters and importers of raw materials, and then, of course, logistics company and online traders. Like the rest of the globe, even in Kenya, online trade is really the fastest growing means of trade. And so for us, we included them at this point because we are also studying what's happening in other markets and the challenges of trying to onboard them. So they are not an easy segment to deal with, but we started early. And I think with the support we are getting from our government, we expect that it will be easier as we move along. Our membership comprises of over 200 plus members. So these are just some of those who are our members. You can see we have multinationals and as well as our own local super brands, but also the medium and small enterprises operating locally. Our service offering takes on 4 forms, which is really provide take back and collection. And by that, we are deploying take back. These are bins from at retail and points of sale. So if you go to malls, shopping areas, you will find our bins that are segregated so that people can be able to return the various recyclable materials from their packaging, post-consumer packaging. We are also servicing residences, institutions, schools, as well as the HoReCa, which is the hotels, restaurants, and catering units. We also are onboarding aggregators across the country, and I'll be talking a little bit about this in depth to explain what that looks like. Because remember I said the informal sector is really the heart of waste collection in our market. And so the aggregators and the waste collectors or waste entrepreneurs, they are so critical to us in being able to recover the bulk of the material that is actually being disposed of. And so for us, we have sought to onboard them intentionally to be able to, one, monitor the data of what is going into market, what is coming back, but also to get traceability of where is material coming from. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Then, of course, like most PROs, we do have a collection purchase assistance where we try to provide financial support to create value for post-consumer packaging, and specifically for the difficult to recover or those with limited installed recycling capacity. What this entails is that for every kilo of material that is being purchased by a recycler, for the kind of material I have spoken about, difficult to recover or with limited installed recycling capacity, as a business, as an organization, we add some incentive on top of that price. So if someone was going to get maybe a dollar, we would add then 50 cents, so they'd get $1.50 to be able to create value or a pull factor for the materials. Regulations and performance standards, very critical. We are keen to grow design for recycling in our country, and whatever is required in terms of the relevant policies around design for recycling. Then, of course, tax considerations and differentiation. I just spoke about RPET. You'll appreciate that because Kenya is not an oil-producing country, and even if it were, there are variances and play that is happening around the pricing of resin globally, and it does affect the price of RPET. And so there are tax considerations that need to be put in place to act either as an incentive or deterrent as would be required. Then, of course, waste levies, and then, of course, harmonization of the East African Community tariffs on waste material, because a lot of our trade, of course, is happening within our regional economic bloc, which is the EAC, the East African Community. And so for us, it's very integral that we are able to harmonize those tariffs. Then, of course, information and data gathering, this is critical, and I had already spoken to it. Now, I just want to take you through our take back and collection, where I stated that we are onboarding agents or aggregators, and we require that they are buying from a minimum of a mandatory of 60% of the informal sector. So these are people, and the waste value chain in Kenya is such that waste moves from my house or a business, and it is collected by a licensed collector and taken to the licensed or approved designated dump site. At that point, there will be some scavenging or mining of different materials, and those materials are then taken by waste collectors and sold to an aggregator. The aggregator will then, after putting the materials together, take this to sell it to a recycler. And so for us, because of ease of deployment, engagement, and also because of the compliance requirements, be it taxation or ETC, we are working at the point of the aggregator. And so we do have an ambitious target to onboard about 100,000 plus aggregators into our platform. And I'll talk about the platform. And we want to be able to cover the entire country. We're having agents across the country. And actually, I like to joke that in Kenya today, if you come, you will see that you can see a red kiosk and see Coca-Cola and automatically know you can get a Coca-Cola from that shop. So we want to brand these aggregator shops such that when you see PAKPRO, you can be able to know that you can trade all your recyclables at that particular aggregator facility. We are also onboarding residences, HORECA schools on the platform, and of course monitoring the weekly and daily collection and trade, as well as the sorting aggregation at the specific material transfer stations, as well as the volumes that are being traded, because we contract recyclers and we are providing incentives to those recyclers. And so we are able to guarantee a premium price for our onboarded aggregators. And then because we are a not-for-profit entity, we are reinvesting, and our desire is to reinvest whatever funds we are able to make, either through revenue share or otherwise, to be able to scale up this particular project. In terms of our process for collection purchase assistance, it's similar to what happens in other markets where we have an expression of interest by recyclers, which is more or less a tender. We do evaluate and contract the recyclers, and these are for specific materials, PET, laminates or composites, and then the used beverage cartons. This is the liquid board packaging, flexible plastics, as well as, of course, any EPS as it is in our market. And then once we do that, we then contract them for a specific volume. We undertake material flow verification audits on a monthly basis to be able to ensure that whatever is coming in is as we had contracted, and then also to monitor what is being recycled and how it's moving, and then to provide reports and issue certificates to our members. So in terms of regulation and performance standards, I've already spoken about this, but it's good to note that we are also very keen on what is happening around the Global Plastics Treaty. And so we are also actively participating in that, of course, because it's obviously going to impact our members, but also the way we deploy EPR. I think as a country, as Kenya, our government is actually pushing for global EPR. And so we are trying to see how this then fits with the global discourse. And so we are keeping our eye on that. In terms of how information flows and what is required, production data, which is what our members are and our brand owners are putting in the market, okay, is declared to us. Okay, once that data is declared to us, we then are able to create a set targets. So targets are not set by our regulator. Remember, I said we are in a quasi-mandatory EPR environment, which really is more voluntary than anything. We then have a target that we set, but we are also able to report the target and the collection data based on our performance to our regulator NEMA. Okay, our brand owners will also are also required to make a declaration of the volumes they have put in market directly to the authority, who is our regulator NEMA, and they will also submit their performance on collection and recycling at the end of the year to our regulator NEMA in order for them to be deemed compliant. Failure to do that means you're not compliant. So I spoke about how we are engaging with the value chain and why this is integral to us. So the photo that you see is actually during the launch of one of our waste trading points. Now, there are some places where we are working directly with existing aggregators, but there are other places because of the dynamic of our market, where we have a lot of low income unorganized residential areas, typically known as slums. We have gone in and actually put in containers such as this to act as a waste trading point. And we have published the prices, so you can see at the bottom the squares. You can be able to see those are actually pictures of different materials, packaging materials, and there's a price that is put up there so that whoever is bringing material at that point is able to know how much they're supposed to be paid. Beyond that, we actually evacuate that material directly to the recycler on their behalf. What this does is that we are bringing the trading point closer to them. We are removing the middlemen that currently are at play and take advantage of the system, thereby denying the actual waste collectors the best price that they can get or a fair price. So this program, we are running it under a program dubbed Biz Nataka Mtaani, and that means that is in Kiswahili, which means business with waste at the grassroots or in the village. And so our target is to onboard 100,000 plus waste aggregators across Kenya. We are using a platform known as EcoLoop, and it is a digital platform. We are looking to create this, to have this as a marketplace for them, okay? So that we'll be able to have our transporters and our recyclers being able to know what volumes are available for sale, what needs to be deployed, what needs to be picked up, where it needs to be picked up. The beauty with this system is we can be able to georeference. So we can tell you that this trader, this aggregator is operating at place X, and the material that is put into the system. And so ideally for us is to be able to create a better and more fair marketplace than the one that is currently at play. In terms of governance and EPR fees, believe it or not, I was the only employee of PETCO for 1.5 years. Today we are a team of 16. But we do have a board, and the board is drawn from our general membership, the 200 plus members I mentioned, and they do have committees. And then, of course, under myself, I do have different functions, but we also have sectors, and our sectors are representative of the different packaging materials because they have a unique, every material has a unique has unique issues that need to be dealt with. And so under those materials, we have sector boards. And the sector boards are drawn from members who are using specific materials as their primary packaging material. So they are able to set the targets. They are able to be the ones who are determining who we are working with by way of recyclers for a given year. And once they do that, then of course, everything else that comes from an operational standpoint, which then feeds into the information that our board of directors requires to make strategic decisions. So in terms of registration as a member, it's quite easy. You fill in a form based on what the law is requires. We issue a membership certificate. You make your declarations of the volumes that you're putting in market, and then we issue an invoice, you pay the EPR fees. Then we undertake verification and audit and reporting of our recyclers, and then certification for the volumes that we have recycled. Now, because we don't have the EPR regulations, we are not able to verify the volumes our members are declaring to us. And of course, that's a loophole and very prone to under declaration. So those are some of the big challenges that we are dealing with in our market. And now what I'm going to talk about right now is what our government, and these are just snippets of what is in the EPR regulations. So what is a PRO's obligations per the EPR regulations? So we are responsible for organizing and managing collection, sorting, material recovery, recycling, treatment, and end-of-life management of our members, establishing post-consumer collection and take-back systems, providing financial contributions to be used to accomplish EPR, as well as setting variation of EPR fees according to established criteria. Beyond that, we are supposed to undertake market development for secondary raw materials of the products, fund research and development programs on emerging technologies. We are also required to make recommendations to our regulator, NEMA, to restrict or ban harmful or dangerous substances in the products of our membership. These are the specific to their materials. So you will find like some of the additives that are being used. We also have now a program around labeling, which is a big issue. And so that's just some of the initiatives. And then, of course, setting minimum targets for reuse, recycling, and recovery for our members, and offering incentives for waste service providers. And then, of course, organize monitoring and inspection of our members' activities to ascertain whether they are delivering on these objectives. Establish applicable mechanisms for enforcing EPR, communicate to our county governments. So in Kenya, we have 2 levels of government. We have our national government and we have the county government, which comprises of 47 county governments. And so we are required to manage those 47 county governments because that is actually where waste is managed at the county level. And so we are required to actually engage with them to be able to ensure that they appreciate what EPR is supposed to be doing, but also to be able to engage with the waste collectors at that level. And then, of course, to ensure that between the authority and our members, there is harmony, and allow annually we are required to have a meeting for our members to assess the progress and performance of our PRO, as well as the governance, management, and administrative systems. It's important to note that in Kenya,
Joyce. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Being mindful of the time, if you could wrap up within the next 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yes. So in terms of charging and modulation of EPR fees, we get membership fees and we get EPR fees. How do we set our EPR fees? It's using basic eco-modulation. So it's not complex, it's very basic, and we are using the weight of the product, ease of recyclability, current demand for the material, the costs of establishing a collection system, the transportation administrative costs. Our current EPR fees range from about 17 to 214 euros per ton, which is still low when you compare to other markets. This is how we utilize our fees, and you can see we are using nearly 82% of our budget is going directly into supporting collection and equipment and training, as well as ensuring 2% we direct towards regulation compliance. These are some of our partners, either through membership or directly through partnership. And why this is important to us is because we are actually building expertise and knowledge, but also to be able to leverage on the associations and their networks, be it residential areas and such like things. Then, of course, in terms of impact, I've already spoken about Biznataka Mtaani, but we do have a bin placement program, training and upskilling of informal waste pickers, and donating of collection equipment and personal protective equipment. Lastly, I would be amiss to say that we have won awards critically. In 2019, I was also nominated for the work that I have done with PETCO as a US Green Chamber of Commerce Global Sustainability Leader. I think that being said, I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Joyce. I think this was a very, very interesting presentation, and at the same time also a very nice example how a PRO can actually integrate the informal sector and build a bridge between the EPR system that is sometimes very abstract and people working on the ground. So thank you very much. Very interesting. Great. Yeah, we have around 5 to 10 minutes left for questions or comments. And you can either put them in the chat or raise your hand, whatever works better for you. I see there's already one question by Wilhelmine. She's asking, would you be open to also collect and aggregate reusable packaging? So not packaging for recycling, but really for reuse.
Yes, absolutely. We would. So for us, and actually we are really keen on getting that going. We're also keen on having more reusable packaging. Actually, that's the shift, because as a business, also for us, how we have regulated and modulated our fees is the more reusable the packaging, the less EPR fees you pay. And also the more recycled content you have in the packaging, the less EPR fees you pay. So we are happy to, and we're very keen to aggregate reusable packaging. The only challenge we're having is it would still end up in recycling for right now. So we would not be able to take it into reuse directly.
Okay, so because the infrastructure for reuse is not in place yet, I guess.
It's limited, yes.
I see. Thank you. There's another question. Do you organize the collections in each county and pay councils for the collection service, or do you pay the collector directly?
So we pay the collector directly. So the beauty is we don't need to work direct. We don't need to pay the council. I know in Europe, they pay directly through the municipality. For us, we don't. We can work directly with Angeline, the waste collector. So we pay Angelina directly what is due to her. And that's why for us, the platform that I spoke about is very critical because it's direct to market. We don't need to go through the councils.
Great. Yeah. And Wilhelmine is writing that she, a serious business, I suppose they will be building infrastructure for reuse in Kenya. So perfect.
We would be happy to engage, Wilhelmina. Yes.
Great. Are there other questions? Yes, there's one. How is general waste managed in Kenya? How does the PRO collaborate with the government body, municipality that manage the general waste? So household waste, I guess.
Yeah. So it's a big challenge. So collection is a very big problem here in Kenya because a lot of the waste right now, we don't have adequate infrastructure. Waste is collected, either homes are serviced or businesses and institutions, and the waste is supposed to go directly to a dump site or designated dump site. We don't have landfills, sanitary landfills or otherwise in Kenya. And so the challenge that we have in terms of being a PRO right now is to try and engage the market to create material recovery facilities. So we are working with those waste collection companies so that they are able to move their waste first to a sorting yard that acts as a material recovery facility. They are able to remove what is recyclable and only take what is completely unrecyclable to the dump site. So we already have that as a working model, and we do have a pilot project that we are running, but it does need scalability, it does need support. And of course, because of the CapEx requirement, it is expensive. So we are trying to build a business case so that we can be able to attract more of those waste collectors or private waste service companies to be able to do that. Yes.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And Dorothee added also the waste trading points seem to be a good place to collect the reused bottles or other reused packaging and packaging in general.
Correct.
Perfect.
Yes.
Of course, we will share the presentation and recording, but we still have 2 more minutes if you have questions towards Joyce. Could you please just elaborate a bit more on how the informal sector is engaged in the system? Yeah.
Yes. So for us, when we started, and you'll appreciate the informal system, the informal sector do not want to, they're afraid of dealing with government. Number one, they are afraid of systems and they don't want to be formalized. And so for us, at first, our regulator wanted them to be registered formally to be able to get tax certificates and PIN numbers, etc. Of course, a lot of them were shying away from that. And so for us, the reason why we are using the digital platform is we have tried to remove the criteria that requires them to be formalized. Okay, so we are actually putting them onto the platform as an incentive for them to be able to trade and get access to the market directly. And with that, we are seeing that the uptake is better and higher because we have removed that barrier that is trying to formalize them. And so for us, if we are doing one-on-one engagement right now, it has been organic. But in order to get the numbers that we are looking to get, we are going to use the different county council systems to be able to market our platform so that at the county council level, they are able to drive these people to join our system. So we are acting as a guarantor for the informal sector to government with this particular platform, so that when government says, I need this from this sector, we are able to provide that on behalf of this informal sector so that we are able to quickly catalyze this trade. Otherwise, most informal sector players do not want to be formalized. And so we don't want to deal with that headache because we need the volumes and we need the material to be collected. So for us, this was trying to short circuit the system to create a win-win environment for everybody.
Great, yeah. Thanks for elaborating on that. There are 3 more questions. I would say we can tackle them if you have still 2-3 more minutes, Joyce. Great. Okay, so what is the percentage of the recyclables you collect from the total recyclables generated? And going in the same direction, what recycled products do you have? How do you promote them?
So in our market right now, other than the carpet, you will find most of our recycling is really operating at a very low level. So like for PET, you'll find this is the first year when we actually have a fiber plant in market. Our preferred rPET resin is actually also in market now. This is the first time over a period of 7 years. So it has taken 7 years for us to get to that level. For HDPE, aluminium, rigid PPs, you find that most of the products are actually being made into the original product. So for products companies, some of our members like Unilever, they are making some of their containers from HDPE 100% from locally sourced recycled HDPE. So that is working very well. around materials like flexibles, which is really the big challenge right now for everybody. Garbage bags has been the preferred mode to convert these materials, the most flexibles, LDPE, into garbage bags. We do desire to have a higher level of recycling. And of course, for used beverage cartons, the liquid board packaging Tetra Pak, we are making the hot compressed boards, which are being used in the construction industry as a substitute for the boards that are used during construction and building. But it's not enough. We're trying to scale it, but scaling comes with being able to demonstrate that we can get the feedstock. So this is how, so for us, it's a catch-22, but we have made some progress, but it's not nearly enough.
Thank you. All right, one final question, and then we have to cut it off, unfortunately. Dorothy was asking, do you think you get the right figures regarding the material introduced to the market from the companies, or do you think you have to wait for the regulations? Yeah, okay.
We have to wait for the regulation because they are not, it's purely voluntary and we cannot double check. So we expect a lot of them to under-declare.
Okay.
Yes.
So hopefully the regulation will be gazetted soon.
Correct.
Thank you so much, Joyce. I think we could continue this discussion, but yeah, I think it was a very informative webinar. Thanks so much for your presentation. Thank you to all of you for joining in today.